I was watching an interview years ago with the guy, and I forget his name, but the guy who's making Mandela Catalog, and he talked about that he has a planned ending, and that was like important to him um for his story. And I think that may not work for everyone. I think some people kind of want to put these characters in a playground and say like, okay, well, how would they react, and like almost simulate it in their mind. I know like Stephen King kind of talks about how he just kind of thinks about, well, how would this character, what would this character do, and that kind of can inform a choice. um but yeah, to me too, like I think having that ending is planned out is important. And I think being sure, I'm making this as a personal thing, but also like I want people to enjoy it, and I have them in mind as well. I'll say.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you brought up Stephen King. I love his book on writing. I recommend it to. I'm sure there will be some writers watching this, and hopefully some filmmakers. And if y'all are watching that, I hope that this inspires you. But if you haven't read Stephen King's on writing book, I really recommend you read it. Something we've been talking about recently, Alex, is just kind of like, you know, this is the new year. We're going into 2024. Something I've been trying to just like think about is analyzing my own writing process. And so I've been thinking about Stephen King's book and how much like he talks a lot about in that book about how his writing just kind of flowed out of him at a certain point, and he didn't even outline at a certain point. And I've kind of just been thinking about my own process, and it's like I do outlines and I prepare, but there's a certain point usually when I get to a final draft that I'm happy with, it's something I just ended up spitting out because I was inspired, and like that's the process that it takes. We were talking before this call about projects. That's like sometimes like doing concept art and pre-production is super important, but sometimes just to get something you're happy with, you just have to start doing it and see what comes out. And I don't know, that's creativity. And it's different for everyone. Like you said, it's hard to give advice.
Yeah. I think the toughest thing in any like any skill is you kind of have to it sucks, but you kind of have to work on it to improve it. And that's the thing, is like I have to write and constantly write and think about these things to get better. And yeah, like I like to outline. I think outlining is where I start. And I try, and I think we've even talked about when we write scripts, like you have all the dialogue planned, but as for certain aesthetics and even like visual cues, or even like is this character making a certain face, like that kind of comes later on a lot. And sometimes a lot of that is sort of like thinking about it over time and while you're on set. And that happens to me too. Like I'm writing a book right now, and I recently kind of came to this. I had it all planned out. It was all going according to plan. I don't know. I guess that was Joker, but um, you know, I had a realization. Years after working on this thing, I was like, well, wait a minute. This character wants this character dead, and they're doing this to make them die, right? They're trying, but I don't think they would do this because this leaves too much up to chance. So I think they would do this. And luckily I'm able to fit it in a way I think it doesn't feel too like, you know, just shafted into and kind of protruding out awkwardly. I think it all makes a lot more sense that I've included this now than if I left it out, because I think it calls into question certain characters' intelligence and motivation in a way that does not benefit the story. And so spontaneity can occur even late into the game, and I don't want to. It's never should be, I think, discouraged. Because I think with any project, something you kind of have to live with probably is at any point you're going to go back, maybe months later, weeks later, years later, and you're like, man, should not have done that. Should have done this instead. Um, and all you can really do is be thorough and work on it, as and just be willing to put in the effort. I know it's easier said than done.
No, you're absolutely right. I kind of want to piggybacking off off of that. Um, I mean, you talk about like the preparation for the writing process, and for short films as well. There's several different steps, and I think like it's worth saying, like you said, like when I write my scripts, I'm usually only thinking about the dialogue. And for the script writing process, that impromptu-ness and that allowing for spontaneity as a writer, like that's how I work best. But before filming, that's a different process. And usually, like for my latest film that I've done, I did a lot of storyboards. I storyboarded too much. It was stuff that like I would be on set and then I would film it differently. But it's like just like that process of like, well, now I have the script, and that was a little more spontaneous. But then I take that and then make something more intentional, and I can challenge the script and rewrite stuff kind of during that phase. But it's like spitting out the script, that's a very improvisational process for me. But then it like honing it in and like getting closer, that's a very planned process.